Welcome to Hopalong Hollow, where our front yard, our entire front yard, is a garden. But it wasn't like this when I moved here. When I moved here 33 years ago, I was a single mom with 2 young boys, making my living as an artist and making very little money. This house was pretty much dilapidated. And the yard had very scraggly grass and a concrete sidewalk that started there at the steps and went straight into the creek and stopped. It was very weird. There were no gardens here, but I did find a few little sedum plants and some Siberian iris just growing in the cracks behind the house. But mostly it was wild blackberries and weeds. And there was a large vegetable garden because the woman that lived here, she was 90 years old and she loved her vegetable garden. She did have a green thumb when it came to vegetables. She didn't care much about having flowers. I spent most of my time going to art shows and making a living like that, and I didn't have time or the money to fix anything, to grow mini gardens, to afford plants. I didn't have it. Basically, I was pretty poor. And I would fix whatever I could. But it was tough because the house really was, like I said, pretty ramshackle. And it had a lot of problems. The previous owners, they had painted all the walls some kind of aqua color. And there was this horrible forest green carpeting all over the place. I just tore it all out. And I was able to paint all the walls. The goal that I had from the very beginning was to have a garden that went all the way around the house. It took a long time to get here. Nothing's really flowering right now. But everything you see, aside from the gigantic trees, everything else was planted by me. One day I'll tell you all about the house. It's just a simple Edwardian colonial revival fort square. That's what it is. A very simple house, nothing fancy. I love it though, but boy, it was a wreck. The porch was almost caved in. Some of the floors in the house were caved in. And being, making a living as an artist, raising 2 boys on my own, I just didn't have much money, so I would just fix things as I could. And little by little, I tried to get the garden going. Little by little, I tried to get this garden going. The initial garden was about 3 feet straight across, out from the porch, just going along this line right here. And on this side as well. I can't even remember what I planted. I don't think it grew very well. Eventually, the pond was put in, but of course it's got a leak in it right now and it's not holding water. It's just a frog pond. And then 25 years ago, well, almost 26, I met James and we got married and everything changed. He has done absolute wonders around here. Not necessarily in the garden, but yes, he does build things. I'm not saying that. But he restored this house. He replaced the floors. He replaced the porch. He sanded down the pillars. We scraped the old paint off, who knows how old it was, put on a new roof. I mean, what a man. Never could have done it without him. Of course, that's not why I married him. I married him because I loved him. But when I see houses now and people are doing renovation or restoration work, I wish that I had back then. I wish that there had been a YouTube channel, because I could show you some things in this house. I remember mushrooms growing in the wall in one room. I mean, it was bad. This border seems to change every couple years, because in the spring it's full of bulbs. In the summer, normally it had balloon flowers. They didn't make it back this year. I don't know what happened to them. There were about 20 of them, and they filled up this garden. Now I'm just using sage, salvia, and this wonderful short coneflower, which is just wonderful, because it gets all kinds of different shades of pink at the same time. So this is pretty simple. 4 plants. Lamb's ear. This is a Garvinia gerbera. I want to show it to you in bloom. It's incredible. And the salvia and sage. And for some weird reason, this little patch of cosmos came up right here, but I just let it grow. So let's travel along here and see what we've got. This one's looking like it's having a little bit of trouble. Have to do something about that. This is a new plant for me. And wow, is it looking beautiful. This is the only one that's blooming, but I got 6 of them because they were at the hardware store for $3 a pot. This is called Garvinia gerbera, and look at that awesome color right there. It's kind of a magneta. Now, it comes in different colors, and the others haven't opened yet, so I'm not quite sure what they're going to look like, but if they're all like this, that's fine. This is a couple little zinnias that self-seeded, and I just let them do their thing, because we all love zinnias. And I basically just cut them every day and put them in vases. Some more of these little short coneflowers up against the stone wall. We've got drift roses. And here are some more of these gerberas that haven't done as well as that one over there. Over here in this corner. It's just so hot over here. And it's been bad weather, as you know. We got some rain today. Woohoo! Wonderful. This is really a wild garden here. Super tall Georgia sunflowers, which bloom later on this month. As I said, my goal was just to have a garden that went all the way around the house. This was full of blackberry, wild blackberry bushes, not very edible, and thistles, and oh gosh, it was just weeds and shrubs, very bad shrubs. So to get the garden to come all the way around the house took quite some time. And here you're so familiar with this garden right here because I film it all the time. But when I started out with this little garden right here, it was just this little strip right here. Little bitty herb garden. No walkways, just lined in some timbers. Now it's quite a few square feet. And then I guess you probably were with me when James built this potting sink. And maybe you were with me when I built that greenhouse out of old windows and doors here in Hopalong Hollow. I used to have a blog. I still have it, but I'm not on it much, called the Hopalong Hollow Gazette. And I called those that followed my blog the Hopalong Hollow folk. And I always greet you with greetings from Hopalong Hollow. But I'd like to ask you if you would mind being my Hopalong Hollow folk, because I notice a lot of people open their YouTube channels with hello friends or hello lovelies or something like that, and those are both very nice. But I would like to say good morning, Hopalong Hollow folk, because if you are on this channel, then you like the same things that I do: antiques, old houses, animals. And why is this place called Hopalong Hollow in the first place? Well, it all came from when I did my books, started doing my books in 2005. And the dwelling place of my first character was, and is, Hopalong Jack, who lives in Hopalong Hollow, and this is Hopalong Hollow. We also jokingly called our house, which is our publishing company, Ochre Moon Manor. We have Ochre Moon Press. Of course, our house is much too humble to be a manor, but that's what we called it, Ochre Moon Manor. And now we're going along the back here. This isn't going to take too long because I want to get on with other things. It's usually a mess back here, but it is another surrounding of the garden. We see a couple nice orange tomatoes right there. This garden doesn't look so hot right now. This lumpy bumpy courtyard was all concrete, and little by little we pulled up this concrete and used a lot of it to make the steps that are going up the hill here. And maybe you were with me earlier this year when I completed the steps going up that hill. So in a sense, this little section here is also a garden. It goes all the way around the house, because underneath the pantry window and the doggy door is this grouping right here of plants. This is a daylily garden out here, which just looks horrible right now, but oh, when daylilies bloom, it's pretty stunning. A beautyberry bush, a chaste bush, the wisteria here, climbing up the arbor that James built, hydrangeas here. You notice that I just hardly have anything in bloom. And of course the little herb garden on the north side of the house. So I've got my garden that surrounds the house, which is always something in progress, just like the house is always in progress. You know, there's always something wrong with an old house, and we're always working on something that's broken or sinking or paint that needs scraped. That's just the way it is here. I've been collecting some seed today from the garden. In particular, this blue sea holly, which has really, really been generous with the seed. It's just amazing. It's so easy to get. I have just got this pile of seed here, another bag of it, and all these that I have yet to process. Something really great about collecting seed from your own garden. And this sea holly really produces a lot of seed in each head. And it's so easy to get. Let the seed heads dry off or dry out, and just by squeezing them, working it with your fingers, that seed just tumbles right out. Well, so far I've got a huge pile of seed here. which I'm just going to let it sort of cure, just dry out, probably in a little paper bag. This would be just as easy to take the heads and put them in a paper bag as well and let them just fall off by themselves. This is a job that I sort of like, separating the seed from the chaff. It's just something it's kind of a relaxing thing to do. I ended up with a lot of blue sea holly seed, so I'm going to send out 12 free packets. It's first come, first serve, and just as it always is when you get some seeds from me, just send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. I will have my address up there in the description box, and the first 12 that I get, well, that's where the seeds will go. These are as simple as can be to grow. I just put these little seeds in about a week ago, and they're already starting to germinate. Just sprinkle the seeds on top of your seed starting mixture, moisten them until they germinate, and just look at that already. And normally they say it takes about 21 days for this to germinate, but this germinated within a week. So if you get a package of seeds, you can save them till spring, or you can plant them right now and just let them grow all winter. It is a perennial, so I have noticed that it does very well over the winter in our garden. But we'll just see how big this gets. I might have to just take care of it in the greenhouse all winter long. Ample helping of seeds in each of these 12 packets, and I'm only sending out the dozen because I only had a dozen envelopes. So I still have a lot of seeds left, maybe at a later date. We will, oh Stella, please. At a later date I'll send out some more, maybe before spring comes around next year. If you don't get a packet of seeds, it just means they were already sent out. Okay, on to the next episode. The Antique of the Week is something really special and I think rather unusual. But by way of introduction, I want to show you a couple of these antique children's books because the author and illustrator of these books was also the creator of the Antique of the Week. So I want to tell you a little bit about this person before I show you what's really special inside this box. Ernest Arras was born in London in 1882, and he earned his art diploma in 1900. He was actually a commercial artist, responsible for cigarette cards, postcards, toys and games, and over 170 publications. He went under the name Ernest Arras, but he also used pseudonyms such as Robin A. Hood and Dan Crow. He actually specialized in portrait painting using charcoal, wash, and watercolor, and his work was well recognized by the Royal Academy, the Royal Society of British Artists, and etc., many, many other fine institutions. And he also illustrated newspapers for the graphics. His first book in 1909, and he went on to become more of an author and illustrator of children's stories. His illustrations were also used in other people's books. It's said that he did had his work in over 400 publications, but himself as the author and illustrator, 170 different titles. He was actually a contemporary of Beatrix Potter, and I have a very interesting story to tell about the relationship that he had with Beatrix Potter, which is really rather humorous. It was said that he was the master of the art of pleasing the child. And you'll notice in this book that it's going to have a completely different style from the other book that I'm going to show you. But he really, really had a humorous and delightful, I think, and charming style. And this is where his relationship with Beatrix Potter comes in. Because as I said, they were contemporaries at the same period of time when she was doing books. Actually, she had done many books and was basically retired by the time she came into contact. She was retired from art, and she had married Mr. Heelis and was known at that time wanted to be known as Mrs. Heelis rather than Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter wrote to Arras using her married name of Mrs. Heelis to ask what he would charge her to illustrate a booklet in the style of Jemima Puddle Duck, which was written, of course, by Beatrix Potter, one of my very favorite stories. She wanted to have someone do a little booklet for her, illustrate a story she'd written for her niece. It was simply a gift. It was not to be published in any other way rather than a gift. And her eyesight had been failing, and that is why she reached out to Ernest Arras. And she was very put out, and I quote here, when in his response, he had the effrontery to inform her that he had never seen that classic, Jemima Puddle Duck. Now, this was undoubtedly untrue because Ernest Arras was completely aware of Mrs. Heelis, and he had responded in this way because he had imitated Jemima Puddle Duck in his book called Mrs. Beak Duck. And actually, he sensed an opportunity and sent her publisher, Harold Warren, some examples of his work and offered his services. Actually, Beatrix Potter was quite pleased by this news and actually took it as a compliment that he had imitated her work. But she did also put in a bit of a cut when she said to her publisher, and I quote, "She had wished for a long time that you could find some second string, and this man, to my thinking, is just what we want." Now, when she referred to Ernest Arras as a second string, I kind of find that really amusing because actually he had quite a lot of work under his belt and had actually published many more stories than she had. And so to call him a second string was a little bit of a cut, I think. This is a completely different style, as you can see, isn't it, darling? And in this book, he's going by the name of Robin A. Hood. So it was agreed that he would submit 6 illustrations, and she provided him with rough sketches and informed him of the coloring that she wanted used and the composition of the pictures. and he completely ignored it. He did everything his own way. He did his own colors. He said he has not adopted her color schemes because there was a tendency to be on the somber side. He also informed her, from her rough sketches, that the figures are a little too near the front of the picture. And eventually they worked everything out, and he did come up with 6 illustrations for her, which are, at this time, the originals are in the Victoria and Albert Museum. Now, I think it's kind of funny because hiring another artist to work from your ideas, it doesn't work out very well, I don't think, in the long run, because artists have their own way of doing things, and especially an artist like Ernest Ayres, who actually was pretty strong-willed, but so was Beatrix Potter. There's a lot more to the saga, but we're going to end that part there. Just to sum everything up, Beatrix Potter considered Ayres, and she told her publishers that he was artlessly conceited and a little bounder. She also considered him very amusing and a scamp. So that pretty much sums up the relationship between Ernest Ayres and Beatrix Potter. So in 1934, Ernest Ayres designed a range of animal characters, and they were manufactured in a toy firm in Britain and distributed free with a new line of Cadbury's cocoa, advertised as the children's cocoa. And these were called Cocoa Cubs. They each had their own little personality and their name. This is Tiny Tusks. And they were exclusively designed by Ernest Ayres, who they called an expert in child psychology. Well, I don't think so. But these were a huge success. And because of the times, Britain was just coming out of the Great Depression. And parents did not have the money to indulge their children with toys and games. So this little free object that came in that box of cocoa, or that tin of cocoa, was extremely successful, with over 300,000 children collecting these little toy figures. This one, what's his name? I wrote all their names down on the inside of my box. I've been collecting these for a couple of years. There were 32 figures all in all. I think I have about 10. This is Piglet Pig. And he's actually holding a little cup of cocoa, if you can see that in his little fat piggy paws, piggy hooves. Now these little characters were so successful that within a matter of weeks, simply weeks, to the introduction campaign, Cadbury ran out of the supplies to make not only the cocoa, but also the Cocoa Cubs. And it wasn't until 2 months later that they were back in business. This is Granny Owl. Let's see. Yeah, Granny Owl. Now, collectors of the Cocoa Cubs could join the Cocoa Cub Club, in which they would get a little membership badge, a membership card, and they would be issued a newspaper. I haven't the membership badge. I actually just found one on eBay, but I don't have it with me right now. So anyway, these were so popular, and it kind of reminds me of Cracker Jacks, because Cracker Jacks also included a little toy. Cracker Jacks is a very, very early item. I think early 1900s was Cracker Jacks, but these are made of metal, not cheap plastic toys. These were real keepers. So, and that's why I have some. But this is called Peter Penguin. They weren't very original names, I must say. And we have here Mrs. Cacklegoose. And Freddy the Frog. Henrietta Fussy. I have a lot of Henrietta Fussies around here. I'm not sure the name of this one. I think this is Silas Slink. Pretty sure this is Silas Slink. He's a fox. And This is the first one I ever found, and this is Nutty Squirrel. Nutty Squirrel. So there are 32 of these that you can collect, and I think they're absolutely charming. I've never really found a cute little cupboard to display these in, so I keep them in a box until I can find just the right item. So here you have it, the antique of the week, Cocoa Cubs. Almost an antique, 90 years old approximately, created by a really interesting, fascinating artist in my opinion. There were many, many other things about him. He's so interesting. He was profoundly deaf by the age of 60, but he enjoyed the opera. He loved to travel. He loved entomology and swimming. He was an inveterate collector, hoarding matchbox labels, stamps, and cigarette cards. And he also enjoyed gardening and collecting old furniture. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Sounds like Beatrix Potter, actually, and many of us, too, as we love to garden and we love to collect old things. So I hope you enjoy this little antique of the week. And I think that that little greenhouse, that tiny little greenhouse, would be perfect for a couple of these little characters. What do you think? Well, it looks as if most of these little characters can fit right inside that door and work in that greenhouse. In fact, Mrs. Cacklegoose is about to go in there and water those pots. So from Hopalong Hollow, that's it for the day and for this episode. We hope to see you next week. Until then, bye-bye.